A powerful banker walked into Lucas Hale's barn with an impossible choice. Marry a woman you've never met within 1 week, or lose everything your family built for generations. The woman? Eleanor Brooks, a disgraced school teacher who had publicly rejected the banker's nephew. This marriage wasn't about saving Lucas. It was about punishing them both. Samuel Garrett wanted to watch two proud people break. He wanted Eleanor humiliated and dependent. He wanted Lucas to know he could be bought and sold like cattle. But Garrett made one fatal mistake. He assumed that two people forced into a corner would turn on each other. Instead, they became something he never expected: partners. What happens when a bully's cruelest weapon becomes the very thing that destroys him? Stay with me until the end, because this story will show you that sometimes the worst beginnings lead to the greatest victories. The lesson: when life backs you into a corner, you have two choices: collapse under the pressure, or find someone to fight beside you and push back harder than they ever imagined. This story proves that the bonds forged in fire are the strongest ones. What starts as survival can become something beautiful when two people choose courage over fear. If this story moved you, leave a comment and tell me. Have you ever turned a terrible situation into something unexpected? Hit like, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you never miss another story about fighting back and winning. The summer of 1887 was a scorcher in Colorado. The heat bleached the grasslands bone white. But for Lucas Hale, the weather was the least of his worries. He'd stare out at his 200 acres, land his family had worked for generations, and a cold fear would grip him. It was the kind of land a man was proud to pass down to his children. But a powerful man named Samuel Garrett was about to take it all away. The trouble arrived at 6 in the morning on a Tuesday. Lucas was in the barn with the horses when he heard the crunch of boots on gravel. He knew right then his time was up. Samuel Garrett, the banker, stood in the doorway blocking the sun. "I'm calling your loan, Hale," he said, skipping the pleasantries. "You have 30 days to pay up or I foreclose. The land, the house, everything goes to auction." Lucas jabbed his pitchfork into a hay bale. "We had a deal. You gave me 18 months. Garrett just smiled, a cold, empty smile. "Market conditions change. I have cash buyers ready to go. It's just business." "It's you changing the terms because you know you can," Lucas shot back. "I'm protecting my investment," Garrett said, pulling a folded paper from his coat. "But I am a reasonable man. There is another way you can keep this land." Lucas felt a pit form in his stomach. An offer from Garrett always had strings attached. "There's a woman," the banker said. "Eleanor Brooks." Of course he knew her. Everyone in town knew Eleanor Brooks. She was 28 and still unmarried, which was practically a scandal back then. She'd been the school teacher until the school board, led by men like Garrett, fired her for having modern ideas. "What about her?" Lucas asked. "She needs a husband. You need your debt erased." Garrett laid a marriage contract on a hay bale. "You marry her within the week and I'll tear up your loan papers. The ranch is yours. A simple transaction." Lucas stared at the paper like it was a coiled rattlesnake. "Why are you doing this? What's Eleanor to you?" Garrett's face hardened. "Miss Brooks publicly turned down a proposal from my nephew. She embarrassed my family. That kind of disrespect needs to be corrected." So that's what it was. This wasn't business. It was revenge. "You're just punishing her," Lucas said. "I'm offering her a home and a husband." "Most women in her position would be grateful," Garrett sneered. "And I'm offering you your ranch, unless your pride is worth more than your daughter's future." The mention of his little girl, Lily, hit Lucas like a punch. She was only 7 and had already lost her mother. What would happen to her if they lost their home too? "Does Eleanor know about this?" "Miss Brooks is a practical woman. She understands she has very few options," Garrett said, turning to leave. "You have until Friday. Think about what's more important, Hale. A man's pride or his family's legacy." The banker left, and Lucas stood there holding a contract that felt more like a noose. He found Eleanor at the general store 3 days later. She was looking at a bolt of simple gray cotton fabric, her face set and serious. "Miss Brooks," he said. She turned, not surprised at all. It was like she'd been waiting for him. "Mr. Hale?" "We need to talk," he said. "Are we talking about the contract?" she asked, her voice steady and sharp. "Or how fast a bad situation can make two strangers think about marriage?" "I came here to tell you I don't force women into things," Lucas said. She gave a short, bitter laugh. "How noble. But here you are, weighing if marrying the disgraced school teacher is worth saving your ranch. Let's not pretend this is about my well-being." "Then what is it about?" he asked. "It's about punishment," she answered, looking him straight in the eye. "Garrett wants me humiliated, dependent on a man who doesn't want me. He wants you broken, forced to choose between your land and your dignity. We're just a couple of trophies for his collection, Mr. Hale. Nothing more." Lucas was taken aback. He had expected anger or tears, but not this cold, hard truth. "What do you want?" he asked her. "What I want," she said, "is my job back and my good name. But we don't always get what we want, do we? We get what we need to survive." A silence settled between them. Two people trapped by the same man, taking each other's measure. Finally, Eleanor spoke. "If we go through with this, I have conditions." "Name them," Lucas said. "My books stay. I'm not your servant. I'll run the house as an equal partner. And I will not be a replacement for your wife. Your daughter, Lily, will be treated with kindness and respect. It was more than fair." "My only condition," Lucas said, "is that you never hurt Lily. She's all I have." "I would never," Eleanor said, and somehow he knew she meant it. "Agreed," she said, and stuck out her hand like a man sealing a deal. Lucas took it. Her hand was cool, but her grip was firm. It felt more binding than any signature on a piece of paper. "He'll want the whole town there to watch," Lucas said grimly. "He'll want to see us broken." "Then," Eleanor replied, her eyes flashing with a spark of defiance, "we'd better not give him the satisfaction, or he." It was less a wedding and more a sentence being handed down at the courthouse. Judge Morrison spoke the vows with all the warmth of a taxman, his voice as flat as the plains. Eleanor was swimming in a borrowed blue dress, holding a handful of wildflowers. Lucas stood beside her in his Sunday coat, looking like he was about to face a firing squad. The room was packed with folks who came for the spectacle, not the celebration. Lucas saw them all, men who owed Samuel Garrett favors, and women who had turned their backs on Eleanor. They were all there to watch the final nail get hammered in. Garrett himself stood up front, soaking it all in. When the judge asked, Lucas heard himself say, "I do." His voice was steady, a hard-won trick to hide the pain. Eleanor was a pale statue beside him, but her own "I do" was clear. And just like that, the trap was legal. The judge pronounced them husband and wife into a silence so thick you could hardly breathe. They were strangers, tied together for life. The real deal was signed back in the judge's dusty office. Garrett laid out the debt papers next to the marriage license with a smug grin. Lucas signed, his hand tight with anger. Then Eleanor signed her name, Eleanor Brooks Hale, wiping away her old life with a scratch of ink. "Congratulations," Garrett said, and the word felt like poison. Outside, the summer sun hit them like an open furnace. A few people lingered, staring as Lucas helped Eleanor onto his wagon. It was the first time he had touched her. "They are all watching," she said, her voice low. "Let them." He snapped the reins and they rode out of town, leaving the gossip behind them. The road to his ranch stretched out, empty and quiet. For the first 3 miles, neither said a word. Finally, Eleanor spoke. "Your daughter, Lily. Does she know about this?" "I told her we needed some help at the house, that you were coming to stay." "So, in her eyes, I am just the hired help? You are—" He trailed off because he did not know what she was. "She lost her mother 2 years ago. I'm just trying to protect her from more pain." Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. "Children are tougher than we think," she finally said. "They understand more than we give them credit for. You taught school for 6 years. I suppose that makes you an expert on my daughter," he said, the words coming out sharp. She flinched just a little. "No," she answered softly. "It just means I have seen what secrets can do to a child. But you are her father. You know what is best." The faint hint of sarcasm was not lost on him. They drove the rest of the way without another word. The ranch house was solid, built to last in a valley protected from the wind. It should have felt like a refuge. Instead, it felt like the prison they were both being delivered to. Eleanor climbed down from the wagon herself before he could offer a hand. She just stood there looking at the house. "It is a fine property," she said. "Worth all this, you figure?" He did not have an answer for that. The front door flew open and out came Lily, a mess of blonde curls and a smudge of dirt on her cheek. She stopped dead in her tracks when she saw Eleanor. "Lily," Lucas said, "this is Miss Brooks. She's going to be helping us around the house." Eleanor knelt, getting right down on the little girl's level. "Hello, Lily. It is very nice to meet you." Lily looked her up and down. "Are you the teacher everyone says is mean?" Eleanor gave a small, real smile. "I was a teacher, yes. Some folks thought I was mean because I made them use their heads. Thinking can feel hard when you are not used to it." "I like thinking," Lily announced. "Papa says I think too much." "Well, I do not think there is such a thing as thinking too much," Eleanor replied. Lily's whole face lit up and she grabbed Eleanor's hand. "Do you like books? And horses? Papa lets me help with the horses." The way his quiet, cautious daughter opened up to this stranger made something ache in Lucas's chest. "Can she show me how to ride, Papa, please?" "Let Miss Brooks get settled in first, honey." "Eleanor," she corrected him gently, her eyes still on Lily. "If it is okay with your father, you can call me Eleanor." Lily looked at him with so much hope he just nodded. "I will show you to your room," he told Eleanor. She followed him inside the clean but empty-feeling house. It smelled of coffee and leather and loneliness. He led her upstairs to a small room with a window looking out over the pasture. "This is yours now." Eleanor set her one small bag on the floor. "Thank you." "Supper is at 6, he said, standing awkwardly in the doorway. "I will handle the cooking. That was part of the deal." "Right," he mumbled. "I will be out in the barn." As he turned to leave, she spoke. "Mr. Hale," she said, her voice tired. "Lucas, I know this is not what either of us wanted, but I will do my part. I will earn my keep." "You do not have to earn anything." "No," she said, her voice quiet. "Mr. Garrett made sure I already paid. But I will not be a burden in your house. I promise you that." For the first time, he saw just how worn out she was, tired down to the bone. He had no idea what her life had been like, disgraced and jobless in that town. "The library," he said suddenly. "Second door on the left downstairs. You are welcome to the books." Her expression softened with surprise. "Thank you." He left before the silence could get heavy again. As he walked away, he heard Lily's happy voice float down the stairs. "Eleanor, do you want to see my room?" That night, Eleanor cooked. The meal was simple, but it was the best food they had eaten in a long time. They were quiet at the table, the newness of it all hanging in the air. "These are good biscuits," Lily said, breaking the silence. "They are better than Papa's." Eleanor tried to be polite. "I'm sure your Papa's biscuits are just fine." But Lily, bless her heart, was all honesty. "They're like rocks," she said. Lucas felt his neck get hot. "I'm better with a horse than a stove." Eleanor's mouth twitched. "Well, I'm better with a stove than a horse, so I reckon that makes us even." After supper, Lucas moved to clear the plates, but Eleanor stopped him. "I'll handle this. You've got ranch work to do." He did, but he found himself leaning against the doorframe, watching her. You didn't have to be kind about my cooking, he said. I wasn't, she replied, pumping water into the sink. I was admiring your daughter's honesty. She was right. They were rocks. For the first time since this whole mess started, Lucas almost smiled. My wife, she used to make them. The word wife, pointed at Eleanor, felt like a betrayal to Sarah's memory. Eleanor's hands went still in the soapy water. I am not trying to take her place. I know that. Do you? She asked, turning to face him, water dripping from her hands. Because your daughter thinks I'm the hired help, you introduce me as Miss Brooks, and you look at me like I'm a ghost haunting your house. I know this is a marriage on paper, Lucas, but you need to decide what I am here. His silence was the only answer he had. Then figure it out, she said, her voice tight, because I cannot be nothing. Her words hit him harder than a thrown horseshoe. This woman had lost everything, her job, her good name, and was forced to marry a stranger who flinched at calling her his wife. She was living in another woman's shadow, and he was the one keeping her there. You're right, he said, his voice low. I'm sorry. She looked surprised. For what? For acting like a man who's been backed into a corner by the same fellow who put me here? No, Lucas said, standing up straight. For not making it clear. You want to know what you are? You're my wife. That's legal, official, and in front of God in the whole county. Anyone who says different can talk to me. You don't have to do that. Yes, ma'am, I do. We didn't ask for this fight, but we're in it. And I'll be damned if you're made to feel like a guest in your own home. The suspicion in her eyes softened, replaced by a flicker of hope. My own home? That's what I said, he confirmed, meeting her gaze. This is your house now, your kitchen, your life. It's not the one you wanted, I know. But it is yours. She just looked at him for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. All right, Lucas. Thank you. As she turned back to the dishes, he saw the tightness in her shoulders ease up just a bit. He escaped to the barn, telling himself he was checking on the horses. Truth was, he just needed to breathe. The familiar smell of hay and horse settled him some. He rested his forehead against a stall door. Sarah had been gone 2 years. He was still grieving her. Having another woman in her kitchen felt wrong. But Eleanor wasn't just another woman. She was trapped right alongside him. Papa? Lily stood in the doorway, her small frame outlined by the light from the house. What is it, sweet pea? Is Eleanor going to stay forever? Forever was a long time for a marriage born from trouble. Yes, he said, because it was the truth. She's staying. Good, Lily said, walking over and slipping her small hand into his. I like her. She doesn't talk to me like I'm a little kid. That's because you're the smartest person I know. Then why do you say I think too much? Lucas knelt to look her in the eye, Sarah's eyes. Because the way you think, honey, it scares me sometimes. You see things other folks miss. I worry you'll grow up too fast. Mama said thinking was a good thing. Mama was right, he said, the words catching in his throat. Do you think Mama would like Eleanor? The question hit him square in the chest. What would Sarah think of him trading his freedom to save this patch of dirt? I think, Lucas chose his words with care, that Mama would understand why we had to do this, and I think she'd want us to treat Eleanor with kindness. I'm going to be kind to her, Lily declared with the pure certainty of a 7-year-old. She's nice and her eyes look sad. I think she needs a friend. Leave it to a child to see the simple truth. Lucas pulled his daughter into a tight hug. You're a good girl, Lily. I know, she said plainly. Can I go say goodnight to Eleanor? You sure can. Brush your teeth first. As she ran back to the house, it hit him. His own daughter had already accepted what he was still fighting. Eleanor was family now. The first week was a careful dance of avoidance. She was up before him making coffee. He ate and was gone to the fields until supper. They talked only about what was necessary. The flour was low. A fence needed mending. Lily's boots were getting tight. At night she went to her room and he sat on the porch watching the stars. They were two separate people living under one roof, tied together by a piece of paper and divided by everything else. Only Lily moved between their two worlds, pulling them together one small step at a time. It felt like the whole town of Ashford was holding its breath, just watching and waiting. Every time Lucas rode in for supplies, he could feel their eyes on him. Men at the feed store would suddenly find something else to do. Women would whisper behind their hands. Even Reverend Thomas, a man who'd known Lucas his whole life, could hardly look him in the eye. Eleanor had it worse. The few times she dared go to town, she was met with cold shoulders. Women who once called her a friend now crossed the street just to avoid her. She'd come home quiet and withdrawn. One afternoon, 2 weeks after the wedding, Eleanor found him mending a fence. She had walked a long way, and her dress was covered in dust. "We need to talk," she said, plain and simple. Lucas looked up. "About what?" he asked. "About the fact that we're living like strangers in the same house," she said. "It's making things harder than they have to be." "What do you want from me?" Lucas shot back. "You want me to pretend this is a real marriage?" "I want you to stop punishing me for something neither of us wanted." Eleanor's voice was sharp. "You barely say a word to me. You leave before the sun is up and come home after it's down. The only thing we talk about is the weather." The truth in her words stung. He had been avoiding her. It was easier to keep his distance. "I am not punishing you," he said, but the words sounded hollow. "Then what do you call it?" she demanded. "Because it feels like you're making sure I know just how unwelcome I am." Frustration boiled over in him. "You want the truth? Fine. I look at you, and I see everything I lost. My choice. My freedom. You're a constant reminder that I failed. I failed to keep this ranch going. I failed to be a man who couldn't be bought." Eleanor stood there, her face pale. "And you think I don't feel the same? You think I wanted my life's work, my whole future, burned to the ground? You think I wanted to be sold off like livestock to settle a debt? I cook, I clean, I am kind to your daughter," she said, her voice trembling just a little. "I have not asked for a single thing but a little respect, and it seems that is too much." She turned to walk back to the house. "Forget it, I will stay out of your way. We will keep up this show for Lily. But do not expect me to pretend this is anything but a prison sentence for us both." He let her get a few yards away before he found his voice. "Wait." She stopped but did not turn around. He walked over to her. "You are right," he said, the words coming out slow. "I have been avoiding you. It is not because I hate you. It is because I do not know how to do this. How to be married to someone who is not Sarah. I do not know how to let you in when I am still holding on to what I lost." Eleanor finally turned to face him, her eyes fierce. "Then you had better figure it out. Because I am not going anywhere, and I will not live in a house where I am treated like a ghost." "What do you need from me?" he asked. "Conversation," she said simply. "To know that you see me, to have a meal where we do not sit in total silence. I need you to stop treating this marriage like a shameful secret. If people are going to judge us, let them judge us for trying to make the best of a terrible situation with some dignity." It was a reasonable request. More than reasonable. "All right," Lucas said. "I can do that." "Can you?" she asked, her eyes searching his. "I can," he said again, and this time he meant it. "Starting tonight, we will eat supper together, the three of us. We will talk. And in town, I will introduce you as my wife. No more Miss Brooks." She seemed to believe him, because she gave a small nod. "Thank you." They walked back toward the house together. There was still a space between them, but it was not as wide as before. It was not love, but it was a truce. And for now, That was enough. That night at supper, Lucas asked Eleanor about her life as a teacher. The question opened a door that had been sealed shut. She spoke of books and numbers, of the students who struggled and the ones who shined. Her whole face lit up as she talked, and Lucas found himself truly listening. She had strong opinions about education, about how girls were taught to be small and quiet. "Is that why they fired you?" he asked. "Among other things," she said. "I gave them poetry written by women. The school board said I was a bad influence." Lily piped up. "That is stupid, Papa. Miss Eleanor is smart. She should be able to teach what she wants." "Unfortunately," Eleanor said with a sad smile, "smart women can make some men very uncomfortable." Lucas thought about the men on that school board. He knew them. "Their loss," he said quietly. Eleanor looked at him, surprised. "The students," he clarified. "It is their loss that a few small-minded men were afraid of you." For a moment she just looked at him and her eyes welled up. She blinked quickly and looked away. "Thank you," she whispered, while Lucas dried the dishes, a quiet rhythm that felt right. "This is real nice," Lily murmured, sleepy-eyed against Eleanor. "Like we're a real family." Lucas saw Eleanor brace herself, expecting him to correct the little girl. Instead, he just tousled Lily's hair. "Time for bed, sweetheart. You've got school tomorrow." "But I'm not tired," she fibbed, her words broken by a giant yawn. "Bed," Lucas said again, a little more firm. After Lily headed upstairs, Eleanor turned to him. "You didn't have to do that." "Do what?" "Let her believe this is something it's not." "We're her family, Eleanor," Lucas said, his voice low and certain. "However we started, that's the truth now. You're here. Pretending otherwise would just break her heart." They finished in a comfortable silence. As Eleanor went up to bed, Lucas realized he wasn't looking at her with resentment anymore. Maybe, just maybe, they could build something good from the mess Garrett made. That night he felt something like hope. It was the last bit of peace they'd have for a good long while. The letter showed up on a Thursday morning. Lucas found it at the general store, his name scrawled on the front. He opened it right there at the counter, knowing old Mrs. Henderson was watching him, hungry for gossip. The words felt like a punch to the gut. It was a formal notice from the bank. His loan payment had been adjusted. The new amount was $847, due in 2 weeks. Failure to pay meant immediate foreclosure. The letter was signed by Garrett. Lucas read it again, his world narrowing to those impossible numbers. The original deal was for $300 a month. This was a setup. "Bad news?" Mrs. Henderson asked, not even trying to sound polite. "Just business," Lucas said, his hands steady by sheer force of will. He left the store without his supplies, the letter burning a hole in his pocket. By the time he got back to the ranch, his anger had turned cold and hard. Garrett had played him. This marriage didn't fix a thing. It was just a way for the banker to line up his final killing shot. Eleanor saw his face the second he walked up. He just handed her the letter. She read it on the porch, her expression shifting from confusion to a deep simmering rage. He never planned on keeping his word. "No," Lucas said. "This was just sport for him, a way to humiliate us before taking the land. He made us go through that whole charade," she said, her voice rising, "for the whole town to see, and it was all for nothing." "It meant he could punish us both and still get what he wanted," Lucas said, feeling bone-tired. "I should have known a man like Garrett doesn't just forgive a debt." Eleanor stared at the letter, her jaw set like stone. Then she looked right at him, her eyes filled with a fire he hadn't seen before. "Where are the original loan papers?" "In my desk." "Why?" "Because Samuel Garrett is an ornery bully, but he's not a fool. He's either found a loophole or he's betting we won't fight back." She walked past him into the house. "Show me everything. The loan, the marriage agreement, every letter." Lucas followed, watching as she laid the papers out on the kitchen table. She studied them like a hawk, her lips moving silently. After about 20 minutes, she pointed. "Here, It's a clause about reassessing the collateral. It says the bank can change the payment if there's a significant change in the borrower's life. He's saying our marriage is a significant change. Exactly. In his mind, you're weaker now. You have more to lose. But look here, Eleanor continued, her finger tapping the page. Any change requires 30 days written notice, and it has to be based on a formal property appraisal. This letter is dated 14 days ago, and there's no mention of an appraisal. A flicker of hope sparked in Lucas's chest. So what does that mean? It means he's breaking his own contract. If we can prove it, we can fight this. She looked up, her eyes blazing. Do you know a lawyer? Someone in this town who isn't on Garrett's payroll? Judge Morrison, maybe. He didn't seem too happy about our wedding, because he knew what Garrett was up to. We need to file a formal complaint. Make Garrett show us this appraisal he's supposedly basing this on. Without it, he's got nothing. Lucas just stared at her. This woman, forced into marriage and stripped of her career, was now planning a counterattack. You've done this before, he said. I've survived men like Garrett, she corrected, a sharp smile on her face. There's a difference. I lost my teaching job because I documented everything when the school board tried to bully me. I still lost, but I made them work for it. What was their real reason? I wouldn't marry the superintendent's son. He decided that made me unfit to teach children. She said it so plainly. Men with power can't stand a woman they can't control. Garrett thought this marriage would break me. Instead, he gave me a fight worth fighting. Lucas saw her clearly for the first time. She wasn't a victim. She was a survivor, just waiting for her chance. When do we see Judge Morrison? First thing tomorrow. But you need to know, this will get ugly. Garrett will make our lives hell. Our lives are already hell, Lucas said. At least this way, we're fighting back. She gave a slow nod. All right then, we fight. Through the window, Lucas saw Lily playing in the yard, not knowing her home was now a battlefield. We have to tell her tonight, he said. Eleanor looked over at the little girl. What do we say? The truth, Lucas answered. That a bad man is trying to take our home, and we're not going to let him. That evening, they sat Lily down between them. Lucas explained it simply. Mr. Garrett was trying to cheat them out of their land, and they were going to have to fight him. Lily listened, her little face serious. When he was done, she was quiet for a moment. Is Mr. Garrett a bad man? She asked. Eleanor answered carefully. He's a man who cares more about money than people. That makes him dangerous. Are we going to lose our home? Not without a fight, Lucas promised. But it's going to be hard. Lily reached out and took both of their hands, linking them together. Then we'll be hard too, she said. We're a family. Families stick together. Her simple words hit Lucas with the force of a tidal wave. They were a family. 3 people standing against the world. That's right, Eleanor said, her voice thick with emotion. We stick together. The next morning, they rode into town together. They left Lily with their neighbor Margaret Chen, the only person who'd shown Eleanor any real kindness. They climbed the creaky stairs to Judge Morrison's office, ready for the fight of their lives. Mr. and Mrs. Hale, the lawyer said, his eyes tired. I was expecting you. Eleanor placed the papers on his desk. Your Honor, we are here to file a complaint against the First Bank of Ashford for improper loan modification. The lawyer, Mr. Morrison, raised his eyebrows. That is a serious accusation. It was a serious crime, Eleanor replied. She laid out the evidence piece by piece, building her case with calm precision. When she was done, Morrison leaned back. Do you two understand what you are doing? Samuel Garrett owns half of this town. He has friends in high places. Fighting him is not just hard, it is dangerous. More dangerous than losing our home? Lucas asked. More dangerous than letting him cheat us? For you? Maybe not, Morrison said, his gaze shifting to Eleanor. Mrs. Hale, if you will pardon my bluntness, your reputation in this town is already damaged. If you push this, Garrett will destroy what is left of it. He will make sure you never work as a teacher again anywhere in this territory. I have nothing left to lose, Eleanor said, her voice low. My reputation is already gone. What more do you think he can possibly take from me? Judge Morrison took that in. And you, Hale, he said, turning to Lucas, you have a daughter to consider. That is exactly why I'm doing this, Lucas replied. What kind of man would I be if I taught Lily that powerful folks can just break the law? And we are supposed to just sit there and take it? The judge looked at them both, the weight of his decision filling the small office. I will review this complaint, he finally said. If your evidence holds up, I will issue an order for Garrett to produce that appraisal and explain the loan change. But I need you both to understand. Once you start this fight, there is no going back. Garrett will come after you with everything he has. We understand, Eleanor said firmly. Do you, really? I have seen what happens when people cross Samuel Garrett. They lose everything, their businesses, their homes. The man's got a mean streak that would make a rattlesnake jealous. Morrison grabbed some official paper and started to write. I will file this complaint. I will issue the order. But you two had better be ready for a war, not just a little legal disagreement. A real war. Lucas thought of his daughter, of his land, and of the woman next to him who had already been through so much. Then he imagined a life spent cowering before Garrett, teaching his child that bullies always get their way. We will be ready, he said, his voice steady. With a sharp, angry-looking signature, Morrison signed the document. May the good Lord help you both. You are going to need it. They walked out of the judge's office holding 3 copies of the order. One for them, one for Garrett, and one for the court. Eleanor held the papers like they were both precious and delicate. We need to tell people, she said on the stairs. We cannot hide what we are doing. We have to let this town know we are putting up a fight. If we act ashamed, like we have done something wrong, then we have already lost. Garrett's power is built on fear. People are too scared to challenge him because they feel like they are all alone. We have to show them they are not. Lucas knew she was right. Sneaking around would only make them look guilty. All right, he agreed. So where do we begin? Eleanor looked right down Main Street toward the big bank building where Garrett ran his whole operation. Where else, she said. We go straight to the source. They walked to the bank, with Eleanor's hand tucked firmly in Lucas's arm. It was a clear sign for the whole town to see that they were united. This was not just Lucas's fight anymore. The inside of the bank was all dark wood and smelled of fake importance. Garrett sat behind a huge desk at the back like a spider waiting in his web. He glanced up when they came in, a flicker of real surprise on his face before he smoothed it over. Mr. and Mrs. Hale, what a nice surprise. Cut the act, Garrett. Lucas slapped the court order down on the desk. You have been served. The judge is ordering you to show us the property appraisal you used for our loan. You have 30 days. Garrett read the paper slowly, his face showing no emotion. When he was done, he placed it down carefully. I see. So you have chosen to make this difficult. You made it difficult when you broke your word, Eleanor said. We are just asking you to follow the law. The law? Garrett let out a cold laugh. Mrs. Hale, you seem to forget yourself. This is business between your husband and me. Nobody asked for your opinion. My opinion became part of this the moment you forced me to marry him as part of the deal. Eleanor planted her hands on his desk. And now that I am Mrs. Hale, my husband's debts are my debts. That gives me every right to be here. Lucas felt a wave of pride. This was the strong woman who had stood up to the whole school board without flinching. Garrett's face turned hard. You are both making a terrible mistake. I offered you a way out of this, and you spit in my face by taking me to court. You call blackmail a way out? Lucas shot back. You promised to clear my debt if I married Eleanor. Instead, you tripled it. That is not business, Garrett. That is plain old theft. Prove it. That is what we aim to do. Judge Morrison wants to see that appraisal, Eleanor said, standing tall. You do have one, do you not? Because if you do not, that would make this entire loan change illegal. It would make it fraud. Garrett stood up slowly, using his height to try and scare them. You want to play lawyer, Mrs. Hale? Fine. Let me teach you a lesson about the real world. I own this town. The businesses, the homes, the farms. When I tell folks to jump, they do not ask questions. When I say ruin someone, they get in line to help. Then ruin us, Eleanor said, her voice flat. Do your worst. We are not backing down, and we are not afraid of you. You should be, Garrett's voice became a low snarl. I can make life a living nightmare for you. For your daughter, too. Lucas moved without thinking. He grabbed Garrett by the coat and slammed him hard against the wall. Papers went flying. You threaten my daughter again, Lucas said, his voice dangerously quiet. And I will put you in the ground myself. No court order is going to stop me. Lucas, Eleanor said, her hand on his arm, pulling him back. He shoved Garrett away, breathing heavily. The banker fixed his jacket, his eyes full of hate. That was assault. My clerk saw everything. I could have you arrested right now. Then do it, Lucas dared him. But you should know, every move you make against us is being documented. Every threat. Judge Morrison will see it all. Garrett just sneered. You think that judge will pick you over me? You are a fool. We will see, Eleanor said. 30 days, Mr. Garrett. Show us the appraisal or admit you never had one. Either way, the truth is coming out. They left the bank with their heads held high, even though Lucas's hands were still shaking. Well, that went pretty good, Eleanor said once they were back on the street. I should not have put my hands on him. Maybe not, she said with a fierce look in her eye. But bless his heart, he sure had it coming. He threatened Lily. Lucas looked at the woman he had been forced to marry, this stranger who was quickly becoming his partner. You were amazing in there, the way you stood up to him. I have had a lot of practice with men who underestimate me. It comes in handy. Her smile faded. But he meant it. He is going to make our lives miserable. We have to be ready. That night, Lucas could not sleep. He stood out on the porch, watching the moonlight on the mountains, and thinking about the war they had just started. Eleanor came out and joined him, wrapped in a blanket against the cold night air. Cannot sleep either, she asked softly. My mind is running. She leaned on the porch rail next to him. Are you having second thoughts about all this? No, he said. But I am scared of what it's going to cost us. Me too, she whispered. I keep hearing what the judge said about how Garrett will destroy what is left of my good name, and I just wonder how much further is there for me to fall. Lucas truly looked at her then, seeing more than just her face in the moonlight. He saw a strength he had been too angry to notice before. She was not a delicate flower, but something real and solid. You have not fallen, he said plainly. Garrett tried to shove you down. This whole town tried to bury you, but you are still standing. That is not falling. That is surviving. Is there a difference? She asked. Yes, falling is what happens to you. Surviving is what you do. He paused for a moment. I was wrong about you. I saw you as another victim, someone broken by a bad hand. But you are not broken, are you? A quiet, bitter laugh escaped her. I am broken in all the ways that matter. I have no career, no future, except being a wife nobody wanted. But I am still breathing, and as long as I am, I will fight men like Garrett. Not by yourself, Lucas stated. Not anymore. She gave him a sharp look. What is that supposed to mean? It means we are partners now. In this fight, in this marriage, and in keeping Lily safe, we are stuck with each other. We might as well make it count. Partners, Eleanor said the word slowly, as if testing its weight. Not husband and wife. We are that too on paper. But partners feels more honest. We are choosing to face this together because it is the only way forward. Eleanor nodded, and some tension left her shoulders. I can work with partners. It is better than being strangers. They stood together in the quiet night, the land around them alive and feeling like something worth defending. "Thank you," Eleanor said finally, "for having my back in there, for not leaving me to fight him alone. And thank you for finding that way out, and for being brave enough to take it." A small smile touched his lips. "I think we make a decent team. Do not let it go to your head." But she was smiling a little too. They went inside, not touching, but the space between them was no longer a wall. The house was dark. Lily was asleep upstairs. Tomorrow would bring a new fight. Garrett would not give up so easily. But tonight, Lucas felt something he had not felt in 2 long years. He felt hope. Garrett's payback was quick and sharp. The first attack came 3 days after they stood up to him. Lucas went to town for grain and found the feed store closed. A sign on the door said there were inventory problems, but the owner, Thomas Wade, refused to look him in the eye through the window. "Thomas," Lucas called out, "I know you are in there." Wade finally opened the door, looking pale and scared. "I cannot serve you, Lucas." "I am sorry. You cannot or you will not. Does it make a difference?" Wade's voice dropped to a scared whisper. "Garrett called in my business loan this morning. He said if I keep trading with you, he will foreclose. I have a wife and 4 kids. I cannot lose everything." The truth hit Lucas hard. "He is threatening everyone who does business with me." "Not just threatening," Wade said, looking over his shoulder. "He is doing it. Henderson's store, the blacksmith, even Doc Riley, they all got the same warning. Help you or your wife and you will face the consequences." "I am sorry, Lucas. Truly, but my hands are tied." The door closed. Lucas stood there, feeling a cold rage mixed with helplessness. Garrett was not just fighting them with lawyers. He was trying to cut them off, to starve them out. He tried 3 more shops and was turned away every single time with the same sad apology. By noon, he headed back to the ranch, his wagon just as full as when he left. Eleanor met him in the yard. She took one look at his face and knew. "How bad is it? A total embargo. No one in town will sell to us or buy from us. Garrett is threatening to ruin anyone who even speaks to us." She took in the news, her jaw tight. "How are our supplies? We have about 3 weeks of food. After that, we are going to be in serious trouble. We were living on what we could hunt and grow, but the feed for the stock was running low. Maybe 2 weeks left, if we were lucky." Lucas hopped down from the wagon, looking like the world was on his shoulders. "He's just choking us out slow," he said. Eleanor ran a hand over the goods they couldn't sell. Quality pelts and clean wool that were worth good money anywhere but here. Her mind was turning. "There are other towns," she said. "Blackstone is 30 miles north." "That's a full day's ride, and you think Garrett won't send word ahead?" Lucas countered. "Then we go farther. Denver's a 4-day ride, but it's big enough that one man's grudge won't mean a thing." She looked him square in the eye. "We don't have to play by his rules, Lucas. We can find new markets and make ourselves free of this place." He wanted to say it was a fool's hope, but seeing the fight in her eyes, he just couldn't. "The trip alone would cost more than we'd make," he said softly. "Not if we're smart about it," she insisted. "We can't just accept this. The second we stop fighting is the second we lose everything." "And what if we fight and lose anyway?" Lucas asked. "Then at least Lily sees us go down swinging," Eleanor replied. "She'll learn you don't bow down to bullies just because they've got power. I know you're scared, I am too. But men like Garrett count on our fear." From the house, their daughter Lily's singing drifted out, a sweet sound in a hard world. "All right," Lucas said, his voice low. "We'll try for Denver, but we need a real plan, not just wishing." Eleanor's smile was a flash of light. "I'll make a list of what to sell and what to buy. You figure the route." That evening, they spread maps across the table. Eleanor knew which goods would fetch the best prices in a big city. Her father had been a merchant, and she'd learned plenty from him. Lucas knew the trails and the weather. Lily, not knowing this was about survival, happily brought them pencils and coffee, thinking it was all a grand adventure. 4 days there, 1 day to trade, 4 days back, Lucas figured aloud. 9 days. That's a long time to leave Lily. "Margaret would take her," Eleanor said. She's the only one who hasn't turned her back on us. Margaret Chen don't scare easy, Lucas agreed. Her husband stood up to that mining company. A banker won't worry her none. I'll ask her tomorrow, Eleanor decided. We'll offer to pay for Lily's keep. We can't afford that. We can't afford not to. This trip has to work, Lucas. It's our only play. He felt the weight of it all. Everything was riding on this one gamble. What if Garrett moves on the ranch while we're gone, he asked. Files the foreclosure early? He can't. The order gives us 30 days. We have 3 weeks left, she said. You're asking the wrong question. What happens if we don't go? We run out of feed, run out of supplies. Garrett wins without lifting a finger. One choice is waiting to lose, the other is fighting to win. All we have left are the dangerous choices, she said, her calloused hand warm on his. In that moment, he saw her not just as the woman he'd been forced to marry, but as a true partner. We leave in 3 days, he said finally. The next morning, Eleanor rode to town alone. She came back 2 hours later with Margaret's promise to watch Lily and a piece of bad news. There's a hearing scheduled, she said, swinging down from her horse. Day after tomorrow. Garrett's lawyers are challenging our complaint. Lucas felt his stomach turn to ice. On what grounds? They're claiming I had no legal right to file for you, since the loan was from before we were married. They're trying to get it thrown out on a technicality. She handed him the formal summons. We both have to be there. The judge will hear arguments and then rule. If the judge dismissed the complaint, they'd lose the court's protection. Garrett could do as he pleased. He thinks he can bury us in paperwork until we just give up, Eleanor said, her voice tight with anger. They spent the rest of the day in a flurry of preparation, spreading documents across every table. As evening fell, Lucas found Eleanor in the kitchen, staring at a stack of papers with tired eyes. You should get some rest, he told her. It's not enough, she said, rubbing her temples. I used to tell my students that knowledge was power, but here I am with all my education getting crushed by a man with deep pockets. Those students learned from you that smart women fight anyway, Lucas said, sitting across from her. They learned you don't have to win for the fight to be worthwhile. How many folks can even read a loan contract, let alone find the cracks in it? You are doing what 99 people out of 100 could never do. That means something, Eleanor. Her face softened with a look of surprise. Do you really believe that? I know it for a fact. I see how you carry yourself through this every day. You show no weakness, just a sharp mind, and a whole lot of grit. Lucas leaned in closer. Garrett figured tying you to me was a punishment for us both. He was dead wrong. You are the best thing that has happened in this whole mess. Eleanor's eyes began to water just a bit. Do not say things like that. Why not? It is the truth. Because it makes all this fighting so much harder. It is easier to stay angry. If I let myself believe we are building something real. She shook her head. Hope is a dangerous thing, Lucas. I was engaged once before coming to Ashford. He was a professor at my college, older and well-respected. Everyone told me I was lucky he even noticed me. Lucas listened, knowing this was important. He wanted a wife to look good on his arm at parties, raise his children, and run his home. Most of all, he wanted a woman who would never have an opinion that went against his. When I said I would not quit my schooling to plan our wedding, he called the whole thing off. Said I was too headstrong for a proper wife. Her laugh was cold. I thought I had escaped a bad fate. Then I came here, and it was the same story in every town. Men wanted a pretty thing for their house, not a partner. Until Garrett decided I ought to be punished for saying no to his nephew. Charles Garrett is a fool, Lucas said flatly. Any man who would let you go for being smart is. You did not want me either, not at first. You took me on because you had no other choice. The words hit their mark because they held some truth. I took you because I had to, Lucas said carefully. But I am choosing to keep you now. I am choosing to fight with you and to trust you with my daughter and our future. That is different. That is real. Eleanor looked at him with those clever, searching eyes. Or are you just making the best of a bad hand? Both. Cannot it be both? He reached over the table, his hand close to hers. We may have started in a cage, Eleanor, but we do not have to stay there. We can build something else. Partners, she whispered the word. Maybe more, one day, if that is what you want. She drew a sharp breath. For a second, he thought she would reach back. Instead, she stood up from the table. I ought to check on Lily. She fled before he could say another word. The next morning at 10, the hearing was in Judge Morrison's chambers. Garrett showed up with 2 city lawyers from Denver. They wore expensive suits and had the kind of calculating eyes that belong to men paid to twist words into weapons. Lucas and Eleanor sat on simple chairs with their whole case laid out in papers Eleanor had organized. Morrison wore the sour look of a man who knew he was about to make somebody angry no matter what he decided. Mr. Garrett, your lawyers have challenged the complaint on the grounds that Mrs. Hale has no legal right to file it. The lead lawyer, a slick man named Ashworth, stood up. Your Honor, the loan was between Samuel Garrett and Lucas Hale. It was signed 4 months before Mr. Hale married Eleanor Brooks. Therefore, Mrs. Hale has no connection to the original contract and no standing to complain about it. Marriage made me part of my husband's debts, Eleanor shot back. The law is clear. A wife takes on her husband's financial duties. That gives me the right to challenge this. Ashworth gave a smug smile. Mrs. Hale's passion is certainly something, but her understanding of the law is mistaken. While a wife shares some financial burdens, this loan had special terms. It limited any legal action to the original signer only. Mrs. Hale's name is not on that paper. Let me see that contract, Morrison said. The second lawyer handed it over. The judge read it, his scowl getting deeper. When he looked up, there was pity in his eyes. Mrs. Hale, I am afraid he is right. This contract says only your husband can bring a challenge. Then my husband joins the complaint right now, Eleanor declared. Lucas, tell the judge you support this. Lucas stood up. I support every single word Eleanor wrote. If the court needs my name on it instead of hers, then so be it. But the facts do not change. Garrett broke the terms of the contract. Ashworth stepped in smoothly. Well, that is interesting. But the complaint already filed is no good. That means any evidence is also no good. You cannot just refile it with a new name and pretend nothing happened. What do you mean? Eleanor asked. If we have to start over, that just gives Garrett's illegal change more time to hurt us. The change is not illegal. It absolutely is. The contract says 30 days written notice and a formal appraisal are required for any change in payment. Garrett did neither. Eleanor presented their papers, her hands perfectly still. I have marked the passages. Your Honor, please read them. Morrison took the documents and compared them to Garrett's contract. The room was quiet except for the scratching of Ashworth's pen. Finally, the judge spoke. The contract does demand 30 days written notice. Mr. Garrett, when did you notify Mr. Hale? 2 weeks before the new payment was due, Garrett answered calmly. Well within standard practice. But not within the contract's terms, Morrison stated. And the formal appraisal? It is in process, Your Honor. Property values take time to assess. I told Mr. Hale about the change based on early estimates. Based on nothing, Eleanor said. There is no appraisal. You made up the new payment to force us to lose our ranch. That is a serious accusation, Ashworth started. It is a fact we can prove. Your Honor, I ask that Mr. Garrett produce that appraisal right now. If it is real, he should have it with him. Every eye in the room turned to Garrett. The banker's calm expression did not break, but Lucas could see him weighing his options. The appraisal documents are at the bank, Garrett said. I can send for them. No. Judge Morrison's voice cut through the air. If that appraisal was your reason for this change, you should have brought it as evidence. The fact you did not tells me Mrs. Hale is right. No such paper exists. Your Honor, this is not how things are done. What is not done is a banker changing loan terms without the proper paperwork. Morrison sat up straight, his authority filling the small room. Here is my decision. The complaint, as it was filed, is dismissed. However, I am giving Mr. and Mrs. Hale permission to file it again right now, with both their names on it. The 30-day clock starts today." Ashworth looked like he had bitten into something sour. "Judge, that is. This is my courtroom. This is my ruling. Mr. Garrett, you have 30 days to produce an appraisal that backs up your payment change. If you fail to do so, the change is canceled, and the original loan terms will stand." Morrison then looked at Lucas and Eleanor. "You have 30 days to prove Garrett broke the contract. If you do, I will consider ruling the entire loan was settled by the marriage agreement as was first intended." The room exploded. Ashworth was objecting loudly, and Garrett's face was dark with anger. Eleanor grabbed Lucas's arm, her hope almost overflowing. Morrison slammed his gavel down once, the sound as sharp and final as a gunshot. "Silence! My ruling stands," the judge declared. Outside, Garrett and his lawyers stalked away, looking like a pack of angry wolves. Lucas and Eleanor stood on the courthouse steps, the morning sun on their faces. "We didn't win," Eleanor said quietly. "Not really. But we didn't lose either." The 30 days Morrison gave them was a chance, but it also gave Garrett time to find new ways to break them. As Garrett climbed into his carriage, his eyes met theirs from across the street. The look was a clear promise of war. That evening, Lucas found their chicken coop torn to pieces, the birds scattered and dead. This wasn't the work of a predator. It was a cruel message. Eleanor stood in the middle of the ruin, her face pale but her jaw set like stone. "He's not playing games anymore," she said. "Lily is safer in town with Margaret," Lucas said, his voice grim. "Where there are witnesses." Eleanor nodded slowly. "Then we prepare for a siege. Food, water, and ammunition." They worked against the sabotage until midnight, with Lucas fortifying the barn and Eleanor taking stock of their supplies. Little Lily slept soundly, completely unaware of the trouble drawing near. Even when they finally went to their separate rooms, Lucas couldn't rest. He lay awake, listening for any sign of Garrett's men. But the sun rose on a quiet, untouched ranch. They had made it through one night, with 29 more to go. 5 days later, just after dawn, the next attack came. Lucas was in the barn when he heard a sharp crack, followed by the distressed bellows of their cattle. He ran out to see Eleanor already ahead of him, her nightgown hastily tucked into her boots. The fence at the north pasture had been cleanly cut, and about 20 head of cattle were wandering in confusion. Worse, the water trough was smashed, wasting precious water into the dry Texas dirt. "How many are gone?" Eleanor asked, catching her breath beside him. Lucas did a quick count, his stomach tightening. "At least 6 have already scattered into the trees. We gotta move fast, or we'll lose the rest." They worked without a word, trying to herd the spooked animals back to safety. By the time they managed a makeshift fence, 3 hours had passed under a blistering sun. The 6 cattle that ran off were gone for good. "The woods are too thick to track them," Lucas said, looking at the damage. This was no random act. Eleanor examined the clean cut on the wire. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. Garrett is hiring local folks to do his dirty work. That night, Lucas sat watch on the porch, his rifle resting on his knees. Around midnight, Eleanor brought him a cup of coffee. Her face was tired but determined. "We can't keep this up alone, Lucas," she said, her shoulder brushing against his. "Who's going to help us? This whole town is scared stiff of Garrett. Margaret is just one woman with her own family, and we sure can't afford to hire help, not that anyone would work for us now." Eleanor took a slow sip of her coffee. "Well, there might be another way. I used to teach a girl named Rebecca Walsh. Her father has a ranch up near Blackstone. She wrote to me last year and said to call on her if I ever needed a hand. Blackstone is 30 miles north. Why on earth would they help us? Because her father, Thomas Walsh, hates Samuel Garrett's guts. 5 years back, Garrett tried to swindle him out of his land. When Walsh said no, Garrett spread lies that nearly ruined him." Eleanor looked straight at Lucas. If I write Rebecca and tell her what Garrett is up to, her daddy might just send some men to help us stand guard. The thought of asking strangers for help went against Lucas's grain, but pride was something they couldn't afford. "Write the letter," he said. "We will send it tomorrow on the supply run." "What supply run?" he asked. "The one we have to make since we cannot buy a thing around here anymore." He gave a tired smile. "See? We are already solving problems." Eleanor's laugh was soft, but it was real. "You are always the optimist." "Well, somebody has to be. You carry enough worry for the both of us." She rested her head on his shoulder for just a second. It was short, but it meant something. Lucas could feel the warmth of her there beside him in the dark. "I am scared," she whispered. "Not of losing this place or even of Garrett. I'm scared Lily is learning that fighting back only gets you hurt, or we are teaching her that some things are worth the fight no matter how hard it gets." How do you know which one she is learning? Lucas had no answer for that. They sat there in the quiet, watching the night for any sign of trouble. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, Eleanor finally drifted off to sleep, her head heavy against his arm. Lucas let her be, even as his arm went numb. She ran herself ragged every single day and never let on how tired or scared she was. Her trusting him enough to sleep while he stood watch felt more personal than any kiss. When the cold dawn finally broke, she woke with a jolt and pulled away. "I am sorry. I did not mean to do that. It is all right. You needed the rest." She stood up, smoothing her dress, putting her daily armor back on. "I will start breakfast. Then we ride to Blackstone." They left Lily with Margaret before they set out, telling her they would be gone overnight. The little girl held onto Eleanor tight. "You will come back?" she asked. "Of course I will. We just need to get some things and see some folks." Eleanor smoothed down Lily's hair. "Now you be good for Mrs. Chen and help her in the garden like we practiced. Will you bring me something?" Lucas figured Eleanor would make a vague promise. Instead, she knelt down to look Lily right in the eye. "What would you like, sweet girl? A book with pictures of horses in it." Lily's whole face lit up. "Please, then a book about horses is what you will get. I will find the one with the very best pictures." Eleanor kissed her forehead. "Be brave, Lily. We will be home before you know it." Margaret walked them out to the wagon, her face lined with worry. "You two watch your backs. Folks are saying Garrett's offering cash for news about where you're going. If anyone asks, tell them the truth," Lucas said. "We are going for supplies. Nothing to hide." "The truth can get you killed when Garrett is the one listening," Margaret said, gripping Eleanor's hand. "That little girl in there thinks the world of you. Do not make me tell her why you are not coming home." They headed north, the wagon loaded with pelts and wool they hoped to trade. The road was rough, winding through pine trees and wide-open meadows. For the first few miles, they rode in a comfortable silence. "Can I ask you something?" Eleanor finally said. "Anything, your wife Sarah. What was she like?" Lucas's hands tightened on the reins. He knew this was coming. She was gentle, patient, the opposite of me. "That is not an answer," she said softly. He let out a long breath. She loved this land like it was poetry. She could sit for hours just watching the light change on the mountains. She made this ranch a home, not just a piece of dirt. "You loved her a whole lot." "I did. Still do, I reckon." He glanced over at Eleanor. "Does that bother you?" "No. It would bother me if you had already forgotten her." She adjusted her bonnet. "I just wonder if I can compete with a ghost. You are not competing with a memory." "You are—" He trailed off. "I am what?" "You are real. You are here, fighting this with me." Sarah never had to face anything like this. Lucas found Eleanor's hand on the seat and covered it with his own for a moment. "Maybe that is worth more than a memory." "Someone who decides to stay when it gets hard." Eleanor's fingers squeezed his before she pulled her hand away. "You say things like that, and you make all this complicated." "It is already complicated. More complicated then," she said, almost smiling. They got to Blackstone just as the sun was heading down. The town was smaller than Ashford, but folks seemed friendlier. Nobody knew them, so there were no stares or whispers. Lucas found a merchant who gave them a fair price for their goods while Eleanor mailed her letter and went looking for Lily's book. They met up at the boarding house for supper, feeling lighter than they had in a long time. "I found it," Eleanor said. She showed him a beautiful book with colored pictures of all kinds of horses. "It cost more than I should have spent, but her face when she sees it will be worth every cent," Lucas finished for her. "You are good with her. I did not know what to expect. That I would hold it against her for being here? I do not know. Some women might have. Instead, you love her like she is your own." Her expression softened. "She makes it easy. She is smart and brave, and she sees the world so clearly. How could I not love her, even though you did not choose to be her mother? I did not choose a lot of things in this mess, but I am choosing her every single day." She looked him right in the eye. "Just like I am choosing to stay and fight Garrett." The importance of her words hung in the air between them. Choosing, not being forced, but making a decision. "I am choosing too," Lucas said quietly. "Choosing to see you as more than something Garrett forced on me. Choosing to build something with you." "What exactly are we building?" Lucas reached across the table and took her hand. "I am not sure yet, but I would sure like to find out with you." They arrived back at the ranch the next evening. Someone had painted a threat across the big barn door. "Leave or burn." Eleanor just stared at it, the color draining from her face. "He is not even trying to hide it anymore." "Good," Lucas said, his voice like flint. "Let him put his threats in writing. Our lawyer will love to see this." "Lucas, this is not about lawyers anymore. This is about staying alive." She turned to him, real fear in her eyes. "What if next time they do not just use paint? Then we fight back. But we do not leave. This is our home now, Eleanor. Ours. We do not give it up because some coward painted ugly words on our barn." They worked by lantern light that night, scrubbing the paint off the door. It came off in little flakes, leaving a faint shadow of the words behind. But the simple act of washing it away felt like a victory. A quiet week went by with no new trouble. The silence was more frightening than the threats had been. Garrett was planning something big. Lucas and Eleanor started sleeping in shifts, both of them running on fumes and sheer stubbornness. Just when things felt hopeless, a letter arrived from Rebecca Walsh. Eleanor's hands shook as she read it, and for the first time in weeks, a flicker of hope lit up her eyes. "She did it," Eleanor whispered, tears welling up. "Her father is sending 4 of his best ranch hands to help us guard the place. They'll be here tomorrow." Lucas felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he didn't even know was there. 4 men. That changes everything. Eleanor continued reading, her voice trembling with emotion. "And her father, Thomas Walsh. He's offered to buy our cattle at a fair price. He'll be our lifeline to markets Garrett can't touch." Lucas pulled her into a hug, and she melted against him, the crumpled letter pressed between them. "Garrett thought he could break us by forcing us together," he said softly. "Instead, he gave us the one thing we needed to beat him. He made us a team." The truth of his words hung in the air. This arrangement, which started as a punishment, had become their greatest weapon. Lucas leaned down to kiss her, a gentle promise of things to come. The next day, 4 seasoned ranch hands arrived, led by a tough-as-nails man named Cortez. He took one look around and said, "Mr. Walsh already paid us. He figures Garrett is owed some trouble, and we're happy to deliver it." With guards on watch around the clock, Lucas and Eleanor could finally breathe a little easier. 10 days before Morrison's deadline, Eleanor finished putting together their case. It was a 3-inch thick file detailing every threat, every act of sabotage, and every broken contract. "Even if Morrison rules in our favor," she said, exhausted, "Garrett has enough money to drag this out in court for years. I just want it to be over. I want Lily to come home to a normal, safe family." Lucas came up behind her chair and began to gently massage the tension from her shoulders. "Whatever happens," he said quietly, "we're going to face it together." That's what I'm afraid of, she whispered. I can handle losing this ranch. But losing us? I don't think I could survive that. Lucas knelt down in front of her. You are not losing me, Eleanor. I'm choosing you. Not because of Garrett, but because you're the bravest, smartest woman I've ever known. He took her hands, and she leaned in, kissing him with a desperate tenderness. I'm choosing you too, she breathed. Just 5 days before the deadline, Lucas found new survey stakes driven deep into their land. A clear sign Garrett was planning to steal it piece by piece. But this time, they were ready. With their powerful evidence, the testimony from Cortez's men, and the backing of Thomas Walsh, they faced Morrison. Garrett's entire scheme was exposed. They won. The ranch was safe, and at long last, they could finally bring their daughter home. Garrett's already pounding stakes in our land, divvying it up like it's his. That man is pure arrogance. Eleanor's voice was like flint. We'll make sure Morrison sees this. Prove Garrett's already counting his chickens. But what if the judge is already in his pocket? Lucas worried. Then we fight him all the way to the territorial court. Eleanor declared, her jaw set. Samuel Garrett will not run us off our land. Lucas held her, feeling that unbending will of hers. We need another way, he said softly. We cannot bet the whole ranch on Morrison. That night they dug through paperwork, searching for a crack in Garrett's defenses. It was close to midnight when Eleanor gasped. Lucas, the marriage contract. Look here. She pointed to a line hidden in all the fancy lawyer talk. It says the debt is wiped clean the moment the ceremony is done. Not when Garrett says so, but when the preacher said, I now pronounce you, Lucas read, understanding dawning. So the debt was gone right then and there. Exactly, Eleanor confirmed. When he sent that new bill, he was trying to collect on money we did not owe. That is not just breaking a deal, Lucas. That is fraud. Her smile was a fearsome thing. We have been fighting him on the wrong ground. We do not have to defend ourselves. We can accuse him. The proof was all there. The contract, their marriage certificate, and Garrett's own greedy demand letter. This was not a civil spat anymore. It was a crime. As she wrote, Lucas watched in awe. The whole town saw a quiet schoolteacher, but he saw a giant slayer. You are incredible, he breathed. I am just a woman with nothing left to lose, she countered. No, he said, you are incredible, and I am the luckiest man alive that Garrett was fool enough to push us together. Lucas, what happens if we actually pull this off and beat him, she asked. He pulled her close. Then we live, he said, his voice low. We build the life we choose, not the one he forced on us. We'll raise Lily right here on this ranch. Together. A real family. You mean that? Even when you're not desperate anymore? This stopped being about desperation a long time ago. He kissed her gently. I love you, Eleanor. I should have said that sooner. She stiffened in his arms, hope and disbelief fighting in her eyes. You can't. We barely know each other. I know you're the bravest woman I've ever met, he said, holding her tighter. I know you love my little girl like your own. And I know you fight for what's right, no matter the cost. That's enough for me. Tears streamed down her face. I love you too. It's probably foolish, but I do. 3 days before the deadline, they rode into town. The autumn air was crisp, and Lucas kept a hand near the rifle under his seat. Eleanor sat beside him, straight and tall. Garrett will know we're coming, she said as the town of Ashford appeared. His men are watching the roads. Good, Lucas grunted. Let him sweat. He looked at her, at the firm set of her jaw. You ready for this? I've been ready since he backed us into that courthouse, she said, touching the satchel with their evidence. This whole thing ends today. They found Judge Morrison in his office, looking tired. Mr. and Mrs. Hale, he sighed. I figured you'd be early. I suppose you have more to present. Eleanor placed their documents on his desk. Your Honor, we found something that changes everything. We are no longer just challenging a loan. We are reporting criminal fraud. That is a very serious accusation, Morrison said, his eyebrows rising. It was a very serious crime, Eleanor replied. She laid out the papers. The marriage contract says Lucas's debt is forgiven the moment the ceremony is complete. That happened on July 20th, the second you pronounced us man and wife. Morrison's eyes scanned the document, and understanding dawned on his face. So when Garrett sent this new payment demand on August 5th, Eleanor continued, tapping the paper, he was trying to collect a debt that no longer existed. That isn't a simple dispute, Your Honor. That is fraud. Morrison leaned back, his face a careful mask. You are asking me to declare one of the most powerful men in this territory a criminal. We understand that, Lucas said firmly. But the law is supposed to be for everyone, rich or poor. You said so yourself. I also warned you that going against Garrett was dangerous, Morrison reminded them. Everything has been dangerous since he forced this on us. Eleanor's voice grew sharp. Our property has been damaged, our animals stolen, and our lives threatened. If the law won't protect us from a man like that, what good is it? The judge was silent for a long moment. I will need time to review this, he said at last. The fraud charge has to be handled carefully. We have 3 days until your deadline, Eleanor stated. Return tomorrow afternoon, Morrison said. Around 2 o'clock. They walked out into the bright sunlight. As they headed for their wagon, a voice called out. Samuel Garrett stood on the boardwalk in front of the bank, his lawyers on either side. His face was a picture of cold fury. A word, Hale. In private. Anything you have to say to me, Lucas said, feeling Eleanor move closer. You can say to my wife. Garrett's smile was pure ice. Fine, I'm prepared to make you a generous offer. $5,000, cash. You drop this foolishness about fraud, sign over the ranch, and you are gone from this territory inside of 30 days. It was a fortune, enough to start over far away from this mess. Eleanor's hand slipped into his, a quiet promise. No, Lucas said, his voice clear. We're not leaving. The charge stands. You're a fool, Hale. When I foreclose, you won't get pennies on the dollar for that place. You can't foreclose on a debt that's already paid, Eleanor said calmly. That's the point of the fraud charge. The marriage settled the debt. Everything you've done since has been illegal. Garrett's composure finally started to crack. You think Morrison will take your side over mine? I've known him for 20 years. Then you don't know him as well as you think. Eleanor's voice was like steel. He's watched you bully this town for years. We just handed him the legal right to stop you. For the first time, Samuel Garrett looked uncertain. He glared at them, searching for a weakness. You'll be pariahs. I'll see to it that no one in this town will even speak to you. We already are, Lucas said flatly. You made sure of that. We have nothing left to lose. Garrett's face twisted into an ugly sneer. Everyone has something to lose, Hale. That sweet little girl of yours, for instance. It would be a shame if something happened to her. Before he could even think, Lucas lunged forward. His fist connected with Garrett's jaw with a sickening crack. The banker staggered backward, blood trickling from his lip. You touch my daughter, Lucas said, his voice deadly quiet, and no court will save you. I'll kill you myself. The folks in town finally saw Garrett for the snake he was. He had shown his true colors, and he knew it. This is not finished, he snarled. No, Eleanor said calmly, but it will be. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock, in the judge's office. The crowd made a path for them as they left. That punch was reckless, Eleanor said on the wagon ride, but she did not sound angry. He threatened Lily, Lucas said, his knuckles aching. I know. I wanted to do it myself. She leaned on him. We have to get her somewhere safe. They took Lily out to the Walsh ranch. Thomas Walsh promised to keep her safe as his own kin. Lily's eyes were wide with worry. "Y'all are coming back for me, right?" "We are," Eleanor promised, her voice soft but sure. "And when we do, we will be a proper family, safe on our own land." Lily looked from one to the other. "Promise?" Eleanor's gaze met Lucas's. "I promise." They rode home under a darkening sky, the quiet house feeling empty without the little girl. That night, they faced the coming storm together, holding on tight in the darkness. "What if we lose everything?" Eleanor whispered, her voice trembling. "We still have each other." "And Lily," Lucas answered. "I cannot lose this life, Lucas. I cannot be nobody again." "You were never nobody," he said fiercely, holding her closer. "And tomorrow the whole town is going to see it." He stayed awake long after she fell asleep, gathering his strength for the fight ahead. Morning arrived, heavy with dread and hope. They dressed for battle in their Sunday best. The ride into Ashford was the longest of their lives. Every turn in the road felt like a final one. When they got to Judge Morrison's office at 2 o'clock, the place was packed to the rafters. Garrett and his lawyers sat on one side. Lucas and Eleanor stood alone on the other, but half the town was squeezed in behind them. Morrison came in, sat down, and let the room go dead quiet. "I have reviewed all the documents in the matter of the fraud complaint filed by Lucas and Eleanor Hale against Samuel Garrett," he began. "I have read the loan, the marriage contract, and every letter sent between them. The law is not complicated. When a debt is forgiven in writing, it is forgiven. The condition was the wedding." Garrett's lawyer jumped up, sputtering about intent. Morrison cut him off cold. "The contract is plain as day. It says, and I am quoting, 'All outstanding debts are hereby forgiven upon completion of the marriage ceremony.' That ceremony happened on July 20th. Eleanor grabbed Lucas's hand. "Therefore," the judge went on, his eyes fixed on Garrett, "when you demanded payment in August, you were trying to collect a debt that did not exist. That is fraud. He was not finished. The court also finds a pattern of criminal harassment and intimidation." Garrett went white as a sheet. "Your Honor, I object," he choked out. "You can object all you want at your criminal trial," Morrison said, his voice like frozen steel. "I rule the loan satisfied, and I am issuing a warrant for your arrest on multiple charges. Bailiff, take Mr. Garrett into custody." The room exploded. Through the noise, Lucas heard someone in the back start to clap. Lucas just stood there, holding Eleanor's hand, watching as they hauled the man who tormented us away in chains. The judge banged his gavel loud and clear. "Order! This court is adjourned. Mr. and Mrs. Hale, that ranch is yours, free and clear." We stumbled out of that courthouse into the bright afternoon sun, Eleanor crying quiet tears, and me too stunned to make sense of it all. Margaret Chen came pushing through the crowd, tears on her own face. "You did it. You really did it." That evening we collected our little Lily from the Walsh place. Thomas Walsh shook my hand something fierce. "Heard Garrett is sitting in a jail cell screaming his head off. This might just be the start of a whole lot of trouble for him." I told him I just want it to be over for us. "It is over for y'all," Walsh said, clapping my shoulder. "The rest is the law's problem. You got a good woman there, Hale. You hold on to her." On the ride home, with Lily chattering away between us, the ranch looked like it truly belonged to us for the very first time. Later that night, after Lily was tucked in bed, Eleanor and I stood on the porch looking at the same old stars over the mountains. But somehow the whole view was brand new. "I cannot believe it is really over," she whispered. "I never let myself imagine this far. It always felt like tempting fate." Under the wide-open Texas sky, Eleanor looked straight at him. "Are we truly doing this? Building a life together, not because we have to, but because we want to?" He gently held her face. "I know this whole thing started wrong, but we can sure finish it right. If you will have me for real, Eleanor, as a husband you actually picked." A shaky but beautiful smile touched her lips. "I picked you weeks ago, Lucas Hale. The moment you stopped seeing a problem and started seeing me. The moment you stood right beside me." She gave him a soft kiss. "So, Let us get married again. A proper wedding this time, with folks who actually wish us well. Not because some banker said so, but because we want everyone to know this is our choice." He pulled her in close. "What do you say, Eleanor Hale? Will you marry me of your own free will?" She was crying, but her smile shone right through the tears. Yes, 1,000 times yes. 3 weeks later, they renewed their vows in Margaret Chen's garden. Reverend Thomas, who had stayed out of the fight with Garrett, presided with genuine happiness, clearly relieved to join two people in love, not in a deal. The gathering was small and heartfelt, a world away from the public shame of their first wedding. Eleanor wore a simple cotton dress Rebecca helped her make. Lucas had his Sunday suit on, looking almost new. This time, the vows they spoke were their own. "I promise to see you," Lucas said. "Not as a duty, but as the wonderful woman you are. I promise to stand with you, to value your spirit, and to love you because our hard start taught us how strong we could be." Eleanor's voice held steady. "I promise to be your partner, to fight when we must, and rest when we can. I promise to love your daughter as my own, and to choose you every day I have." When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, their friends applauded with real joy. Lily cheered the loudest, calling Eleanor Mama for all to hear. At the little party afterward, I danced with Eleanor in the garden, both of us laughing at my clumsy feet. "Happy?" I asked her. "Unbelievably, surprisingly happy," she said. "A few months ago, I had no future. Now I have more happiness than I know what to do with." I told her she could start a school right there on the ranch if she wanted. "You would support that?" she asked, "even though most men think an educated woman is dangerous?" I just grinned. Well, most men are fools. Besides, I married a dangerous woman on purpose this second time around. I enjoy the risk. As the seasons turned, the Hale Ranch finally found its rhythm. Lucas worked the land, and Eleanor's little schoolhouse was soon filled with children hungry to learn. Word came from town that Garrett's whole empire had crumbled. He served time in prison before running off to California. Our town slowly healed, turning from a place run by fear into a true community. Spring came with a beauty that felt like a fresh start. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Eleanor rested a hand on her stomach, which was still flat. "I have news," she said quietly. I looked at her, saw the mix of joy and nerves on her face, and I understood right away. Doc Riley confirmed it that afternoon. A baby, due in the late fall. She met my eyes, a little worried. "I know we talked about it, but is this okay?" I just pulled her close, too full of happiness to speak. "Now that this is a real family, are you happy?" Lucas held her tight, his voice full of emotion. "Happy is not a big enough word for this. Lily is going to be a wonderful big sister." "And you are going to be an amazing mother," he said, kissing her. "Our child will not know anything about forced arrangements or crooked bankers. They will just know love, this land, and parents who chose each other." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "This ranch, Lily, and now a baby. It is more than I ever dared to dream of. Sometimes I'm afraid I will wake up." "This is real," Lucas said, placing his hand on her stomach. "We fought too hard for this to let fear steal it. This is the new beginning we earned." They sat together as the sun went down, the ranch peaceful all around them. From the house they could hear Lily practicing her reading. The land stretched out before them, a witness to all their struggles. Samuel Garrett had intended to break them both, to leave Eleanor in submission and Lucas in defeat. Instead, his cruelty had handed them a reason to fight, a bond that proved stronger than his greed. The county that had once judged them now watched quietly as the Hales built their life. The woman they thought was weak had become the reason it all survived. Eleanor leaned into Lucas's warmth. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me, for choosing me, for building this with me." His voice was rough with feeling. "Thank you for being brave enough to stand your ground. Thank you for loving Lily. And thank you for loving me, even when I was too stubborn to see what was right in front of me. They stayed on that porch until the sky was full of stars. The marriage that began with a threat had become the foundation of everything good. Lucas was thankful for whatever twist of fate had brought them together, even through so much trouble. Sometimes the worst beginnings can lead to the best endings, and sometimes two people forced into a corner can build something so strong that no amount of wickedness can tear it apart. The ranch was theirs. The future was theirs. Every single day that followed was theirs too, built on choice and earned with courage. That was worth everything they had gone through. That was worth the fight. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.